Thanks for the introduction, Emily. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for everyone taking your time to jump on the call wherever you are in New Zealand or around the world. And today I've got the intention to give you as much content and helpful information as possible. So it might be a little bit like drinking through a fire hose. So just get a pen and paper and write it down. And if you want to stay on the call at the end and answer any questions that you can. So the first thing I'd like to cover off with everybody is just basically what mental skills is and how does it help you at work. So how is it relevant to work? Why does it matter? It's starting to get a bit more mainstream now, mental skills, but what actually is it? So one thing that an easy way to understand mental skills is it fits into the system, a wider system. So you all have skills, your team members have skill sets and capabilities at work, how well they can perform in their role. Your organization has a system and a structure that helps performance. And the third part of that triangle is mental skills and mindset. And that fits into high performance. So if you have all of those things really well, people with great skill sets, an organization with great structures, and people that have mental skills, then you have a high performance culture. And that's where it fits in. Now, if I was to put it to you, why did the All Blacks mash Argentina in the rugby game 2 weeks ago? And yet the next week with exactly the same players and exactly the same skill set, why was it that the next week they lost? And that was down to mental skills or that mindset piece. And that's the same thing at work. It doesn't matter. And when we're dealing with people and we're dealing with revenue, we need to get this part right. Now, so we've got skill sets, structures and system, and mental skills, and we break mental skills down into 4 simple categories or 4 simple pillars. And that's mindsets and beliefs, clarity and direction, performing under pressure, and communication and culture. So like I say, poor skill set and structures isn't going to outperform a bad mindset. Or I could have the greatest mindset in the world, but I'm not going to play for the All Blacks this weekend because I don't have a skill set. I'm not big enough, fast enough, and strong enough. I could have the greatest mindset in the world, but I'm not going to be a better CEO than Elon Musk because I don't have his skill set. But it is important, and we're going to cover off each of these pillars today. So we go down to the first one here, and we're going to cover off our agenda. So first you want to know framework, how you can integrate it and take it away and drop it into your unique culture to make it relevant for your industry. So we need to know what's relevant in your industry. Then I'm going to give you some quick tools and quick wins for each section. I can't cover off everything in 1 hour, but I'm going to give you at least one simple tool that you can hopefully apply that say, okay, I can use that. I can use that tomorrow with my team, or I can use that tomorrow for myself. And then lastly, how can we integrate it into our industry? So the first question is over to you guys. And actually, I'd like you to put it in the chat function, this question here. And Emily, you can read any good ones out. And that is, in your industry and in your business, what are the relevant mental skills that people need? Because we're thinking about things from a proactive point of view, not a reactive point of view. So the old way was the deficit model is Emily's going to call EAP when there's been conflict at work or a dog died or something bad happened. Emily calls EAP the deficit model. It's reactive. We're moving to a position where Emily gets support so that she can be even more amazing at what she does. So that's that proactive, integrated, high performance model rather than the deficit reactive model. So if you want to put in the chat function, what are the needs of your people? For example, it might be overcoming rejection. They're great at sales, but some of them struggle to overcome rejection. Or it might be, they just can't seem to break through this performance plateau. Or it might be, there's a lot of change right now with AI and restructures, and they're struggling to deal with all of that change. So pop in the chat function if there's anything that's relevant to you. And because you need to be taking the stuff that's relevant to you.
Wilton, there's a few coming through thick and fast. So we've got things like positive mindset and emotional intelligence, on a similar vein, resilience, integrity, growth mindset, workload challenges, change, being vulnerable to ask for help, leading the next generation, I guess, relating to different types of people and different mindsets might be another one.
Fantastic stuff.
Empathy, collaboration.
Good stuff. So hopefully we can have some answers to help in those areas today. So that's what I want you to think. How can we apply it to you rather than just generic and vague mental skills? What is going to make a difference for you? So, like I say, the first section here is we're going to cover off mindset. Now, what is mindset? Mindset is basically how we filter information. So everybody filters information differently. How I think of a situation is different to Emily. It's different to Tom. It's different to Charlene. We all have the same information, but we're perceiving it and filtering it a different way. And we'll never rise above the opinion that we have of ourselves. So this is how mindset can really influence. So the first, I'm going to give you 2 tools that you can take away that you can adopt into your culture around mindset. The first one is the helping your team take back personal agency. A research done at Stanford University says that agency is the #1 thing that helps somebody's performance and well-being. Now, agency is a fancy way of saying that somebody believes that they have personal control over what they do. So they have a little bit of control rather than just being on autopilot. So if you move from autopilot to agency, this is life-changing stuff. Pretty much every personal development book you read is just talking about personal responsibility. And the reason they're bestsellers is it's the biggest thing that drives the needle. You might have heard of a guy called Jocko Willink, who's a Navy SEAL. He wrote a book called Extreme Ownership. It's another name for agency. In a story in his book, he says something like his platoon started firing at each other in Afghanistan because somebody got the coordinates wrong and somebody was killed in a friendly fire incident. And he talks about having a culture of extreme ownership, meaning that everybody in that team didn't blame anyone else. The person that pulled the trigger said it was my fault that I did this. I should have pulled that trigger. The person that sent them to the wrong locations, no, it's my fault. I shouldn't have sent them to the wrong location. The person that was leading that mission said, no, I didn't prepare you for the disruption of this mission. And the CEO leading the military said, ultimately, I'm accountable for all of this. So this is what a culture of extreme ownership looks like at a company level. And by the way, it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength to own things. So that's what it looks like at a company level. And we also need to do it at an individual level too. So it's understanding that nobody really cares about my problems. I have problems. I've got challenges just like everybody in the room. But who ultimately cares about me? Very few people. So I need to be empowered to say to myself, yeah, I've got problems, but what can I control to change it? And that's giving myself power and agency back. It's one of the biggest gifts you can help to give somebody. If you give them personal agency and coach them through this, super important. There's a really cool quote. Actually, if you write down these 2 quotes to summarize these 2 points, that is, empowerment comes via responsibility. Empowerment comes via responsibility. That summarizes this whole slide. And also, choices, not chances, determine your future. Choices, not chances, determine your future. So in an athlete context, when I work with professional athletes, I see this a lot. Well, especially developing athletes. They slip below the line into the blame, excuses, and denial. So this player here, Andrei Rublev, he's yelling at the linesperson because of a bad call. So Andrei Rublev is the victim in the situation, not the linesperson that he's yelling at, because Andrei Rublev has a victim mindset saying, woe is me, the call was bad. But what he can control? He can control that he probably shouldn't have hit it that close to the line in the first place. He can also control that what's he going to do on the next point? On the next point, he can control how he performs, his first serve, how he runs, how he performs, how he moves. So he needs to take back agency and get above the line. So, and a personal story, me growing up as a developing tennis player and rugby player, I had a lot of excuses. I had so many excuses that, it was I got unlucky, or I was carrying a minor injury, or, the ref made a bad call, or that was so windy and I couldn't handle the wind. All of these excuses. Now, what I coach people is, what can you control to give yourself agency back? Remembering that, remember that quote, empowerment comes via responsibility. Now, in a work context, it happens all the time at work. I work with sales teams. People fall below the line. It's nothing wrong to fall below the line. We all do it. But the point is, how quickly can we move back above it? So in a sales context or a work context, you might have somebody that's not performing and not hitting their targets. And there could be really valid excuses. That could be like, competitors are cutting prices, or there's lots of disruption, or they could say they have the cards are stacked against them because they have a bad territory. All these valid excuses. But ultimately, who is that serving? How is that helping them? It's not. So they need to become more empowered and say, okay, what can I do to get better? Because it's easy to stay in that below the line mindset, in that disempowered state. So link it back. Think, how it might work. And when have I heard people slip below the line? And I'll give you a situation here. And actually, what I'll get you to do, pop in the chat function how you as a leader would coach Tom in this situation. So Tom in this situation, this is what he's telling himself. My team dropped the ball. I gave them clear instructions, but they just don't have the right skills or work ethic. I was set up to fail from the beginning with this team. Now, how would, pop in the chat function if you want to, how would you help Tom in this situation? How would you coach him to get back above the line? If there's no comments in the chat function, I can help out. You can help him with simple things like, okay, Tom, it might be valid that your team didn't have the right skills, but what are you doing? What can you take? What's a small step that you can take to help train your team for next time? So now, instead of blaming his team, it's like, okay, got that control. Next time I'm going to upskill my team. And the other question to ask himself, is it serving him? Is it serving you to blame your team? But nobody cares that you have a bad team. What are you going to do about it? Similarly, he can reframe it. It's actually not by owning the situation and saying, it's my fault for not training my team and upskilling my team. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. So if there's any comments now in the chat function, Emily, how to coach Tom, feel free to read them out. Otherwise, we'll move through to
We've got some goodies. Tom, do better. I like that one.
Yeah.
Were there clear instructions? Did they understand the instructions to begin with? And then also the retrospective kind of viewpoint of what could we change to help next time? Is there some learning we can take from it, etc.?
Great. Those are all above the line mindsets. So the leaders have it. Now they need to get their team to have it. So if everybody had it, we've got a great culture. And it's kind of like a marriage. If one person is the victim, has a victim mindset and is always complaining, and the other person is an empowered mindset, it's important that both people, everyone in the team, everyone in the business, both have a above the line mindset. You move forward as a unit. Now, growth mindset. Everyone knows about growth mindset. It's through the work of Carol Dweck from Stanford University. A lot of repeated trials showing how the impact that it has. Just to recap what it is, a growth mindset is you believe that your performance is not fixed. You can improve your level of skills through deliberate practice and effort. Whereas fixed mindset, you have predetermined ability. Either you're good at something or you're not. And it's usually determined by genes. It's fixed and you can't really get better through effort. Either you got it or you don't. So you can hear it in language. A fixed mindset language was me, you know, our family is just not really good at maths, or, I'm just not a natural salesman, or, I'm really not a natural, I'm not really a speaker. I'm not really a speaker. And these are fixed views, and you're sure as hell this person's not going to be a speaker if they believe that they're not a speaker. And you're sure as hell then they're not going to be a salesman if they believe that they're not a salesman. And the question is, it might be true now, but how is it helping? So these are the best quotes that I know on growth mindset. There's no failure, only feedback. There's no failure, only feedback. So if you have a mindset of feedback, you have a mindset where you're looking to learn because you're tuning into feedback because you know that you can change. The CEO of Zuru, the founder of Zuru from New Zealand, I listened to a podcast recently. His name is Nick Mowbray. He had an even better quote than that. He said, "You either win or you learn. You win or you learn." I love that quote because it frames it as winning. Another one, and this is particularly important in sports and with young teams as well in the boardroom. Are you here to impress or improve? Are you here to impress or improve? So a growth mindset person doesn't really care about impressing other people. It's what are they doing to get better? So when you are learning and doing training programs, it's not about flexing to look good. It's okay to not know. So are you here to impress or improve? So that's what a growth mindset is. And in terms of working with athletes, I've recently worked with a professional rugby player, and he was in a situation where he was the best player on the team. He was the most dynamic runner. He was playing fullback. And it was overtime in a playoff match. And instead of him getting his hands on the ball, he was scared to involve himself and he avoided it, even though he should have been the one getting involved because he was the most likely player to break the line and score. But he was worried about failure, so he avoided it. So what I would say to him is, with the growth mindset, is, are you here to impress or improve? There's no failure, only feedback. It's okay. It's okay. So with the coaching, we allowed him in his next performance to have a mindset of a growth where he was now willing to try new things. And it didn't really matter if he didn't perform how he wanted to. And later on, I'll show you how to link that to clarity and direction in the next section, because we also linked it to his values. Now, in the chat function, you're going to be the coaches again. So in the chat function, I want you to answer this situation. How would you coach Tom to overcome his fixed mindset? First, we need to listen and see where he has a fixed mindset. So he's in a company that's implemented some new software. Tom's struggling to adapt to the new software. He says, this new system is ridiculous and overly complicated. I'm not a techie person. I've never been good at this stuff. So you see the fixed mindset is, I'm not a techie person and I've never been good at this stuff. He's fixed. Of course, he's not going to be a techie person if he's telling himself he's not. So, right, how are you coaching him? Pop it in the chat function. And Emily, if you've got some goodies, you can read them out. The first thing I would say would be, where's his self-talk? His self-talk is horrible. It's like, instead of saying, I'm not good, I'm not a techie person, is I'm not a techie person yet. And self-talk is also cultural. People in an organization, if you have poor self-talk, it acts like a cybernetic system, and that everyone starts to have poor self-talk. So where's your self-talk? And where's the self-talk in your organization? There also is, you can start to model things and say, I'm actually not very techie as well, but I've just done this course and I've discovered I can learn this new CRM system. It's not easy, but I can actually do it. I'm improving. So you can provide evidence of somebody that's changing and getting better, and you can take some small steps. It's okay. It's not going to be easy, but here's a small step. We're going to get you to see if you can first start inputting a new name into the CRM system, just to show you can do it. Another thing is, when I work with clients, you can actually do a questionnaire. It's called a fixed mindset questionnaire, to see if you're a fixed or a growth mindset. And it also reveals what triggers you into a fixed mindset. So there's certain things that can trigger you into a fixed mindset, such as fear of failure, comparing yourself to others, these things. So there's a questionnaire that you can do in this, and I can send that out later. So are there any good answers? I'm sure there are in the chat
There are.
function. What do you hit me with, if you, Emily?
Yeah, we're looking good. There's some really nice human ones. Putting Tom in the center of the situation, and, you look at all the tech you're already using. You've done well with this in the past. Some collaborative approaches. Can I help you? What do you need from me? Should we do it together? Can I partner you with someone else who's comfortable, confident in this space? So, taking time to be human about it.
Great.
Is what I'm hearing.
Really good. Yeah. Good. Awesome answers. Build Tom up to let him show that it's possible. Really, really cool.
And
So
connecting him. Sorry, I missed the last one. Connecting him to the personal benefits of him adopting the new tech as well, making it meaningful for him.
Good work.
Yeah.
Excellent. Nice. Okay, the last one, I'm just going to move through this one quite quickly. But this one comes into the fact that we never rise above the opinion that we have of ourselves. And it comes from cybernetic theory. And it's why people don't do hard things. It's why people don't do things that they really want to do. So, and it's about breaking through a terror barrier. So, for example, if somebody is scared of public speaking but wants to be a public speaker, they have to break through a terror barrier to do it, because everything in their psychology wants to keep them safe and prevent them from doing it. So they're going to need to break through a comfort zone to set a new level to show them that it's possible. So you're supposed to do hard things. Things are supposed to be hard. So to help your team, it's important to coach them through getting outside their comfort zone and explain to them that, it's something that I talk about in more detail in other courses, but it comes down to cybernetic theory, getting outside your comfort zone and knowing that you need to do the harder thing when it's the right thing to do, because otherwise we just fall into autopilot mode and plateau. It's why you already know what your team will do, what individuals in your team will do when they are supposed to bring in a certain amount of revenue. You kind of already know that this person's going to bring in this much and this person's going to bring in this much. And they very, very rarely differ from that. It's because it's defined by their self-image. It's a cybernetic system. It's about shifting that and helping them grow past it. And that's some belief work. You'll never rise above the opinion that you have of yourself. So we talk about that later, but helping people with their self-belief and shifting that image and what you can do, like that last comment about, building Tom up, is super important. So that's 3 tools you can use for mindset. Now we're going to move on nicely to clarity and direction. And clarity and direction is so important, because if we're unclear about what we want, we're going to lack focus we're going to lack motivation. We're kind of just going to be drifting, like nihilistically drifting through our lives, through our workplace, because we have no goals. So the solution is to create a clear vision and clear values and goals, because life and decisions are a lot easier when we know what these are. So I'm going to give you 2 tools to help you, 2 really simple tools that you can apply to help get people clear. So if I was to put to you, I had a family member recently bought a Ford Ranger, and they started to notice all the other Ford Rangers on the road. I was driving around with them, and they were saying, "Oh, gee, that's the new model of Ford Ranger." And, "Well, that's a nice black, sleek looking Ford Ranger." And they're looking at the wheels of the Ford Ranger. And I was like, and then I started to look at them as well. I started seeing all these Ford Rangers. In the past, I wouldn't notice what car is on the road, but now I was filtering and focusing on them. Now, what if we could do that for our life? So instead of focusing on Ford Rangers, it's like you're focusing on your goal. You're focusing on your specific task. You're focusing on your bigger vision of what you want and the goals that you can reach. So a simple way to do this is to help somebody find their vision. They've got a team member that's drifting a bit, they're unmotivated, they're unclear. It's like, what do you want? It's like, I really want a promotion. Okay, so their vision is, okay, my vision is to get a promotion, or my vision is to lead this team, or my vision is to become a great public speaker, or my vision is to buy an investment portfolio, or my vision is to start investing in ETFs and index funds. My vision is to provide for my family, and it's to get fit and healthy. So you need vision in finances, you need vision in career, you need vision in family, you need vision in health, you need vision in growth, and it's all holistic. So this is how you motivate your team and get them clear on what they want, is to see, what do they really want? You can ask questions like, what's your 5-year plan? Or what are your goals for the year? That's a simple thing. Or create a vision board based on holistic aspects of your life. Our vision is specifically focusing on work. What do you want out of work? So you need a vision for that. So you have something to drive you and pull you towards it. It's really important stuff. You can have a simple conversation to find somebody's vision. It's often a deeper conversation that a lot of people don't have. And it works. It does work, because just like the Ford Ranger, we start focusing on these things. At a more advanced level, some of my clients, I'll take them through a guided visualization or a timeline technique to help them be more relaxed in a more relaxed state, so they can sort of really visualize their future. What do they actually want? We often don't take time to think, what am I doing? What do I really want? Why do I do this at work? So I can have this. And often we need to kind of de-stress and take time to really think about it, what we want. So we do need a vision. And I know this can be perceived as a little bit kind of abstract, but as a leader, you're there to help people. How can you help your team and employees create a vision so that they're not stagnant? And how can you help your employees and team achieve that vision? That's what it's all about. That's why we're here. So I would encourage you to dive into this type of thing. The other thing, a little bit less abstract than vision, is values. So there's an exercise you can do. It's called a values elicitation. Takes a bit of time, but you can drill down to your core values. So most companies will have core values, and people can also have their own core values for work. And you can also have a core values for your life. You can have core values for work. They're separate. And you have the company core values. So remember that rugby player that was scared of getting involved in the play, even though he was the best player? Well, we did this on him, and one of his core values was being courageous, his value of courage. So now he can use this and call on this whenever he had that fear in the next game or in the next playoff, so that he could be courageous. That's why values are super important, because it gives us that North Star in decision making. So Tom, we have a situation with Tom where Tom has 5 core values: integrity, growth, family, service, and teamwork. So those are his values in a workplace context. He values teamwork in a workplace context. He values service and contribution to others. It's also for his family. He provides for his family. That's why he goes to work. He values growth and integrity and respect. Those are Tom's core values at work. Most core values, there's no right or wrong values, by the way. Those are Tom's core values. But how can this help Tom when things go wrong? How can it help him be more clear on his decision making? So there's 3 things that are going wrong for Tom right now. There's constant disruption and change. He feels unmotivated and disengaged, and he has to constantly deal with an abrasive client. So in the next slide, how can we coach Tom to use his values to be a guiding North Star for him? And you can do this on yourself too. So Tom's core values. The value that's threatened here is constant change. With constant change, we know that his value is family. So how can the value of family help him with constant change? Well, ultimately he's there to provide for his family. It's really his why. Even though it's tough right now, that value of family can pull him through. Same with growth. There's a lack of motivation, but with growth, I have a lack of motivation right now, but I do value growth. So actually, I need to get back onto this so that I can maybe request a new challenge or try a new skill. So he's trying to grow. Same with a difficult person. There's a difficult and abusive person at work, but I value integrity. So I'm going to put up a boundary to let him know that it's not acceptable. Or I value teamwork. So I'm going to actually initiate a conversation, a courageous conversation to bring this person back into the fold. So this is how values are your guiding star of principles that help you figure out what you want to do. It's almost like a Bible for your life, some guiding values. Moving on to our next section, communication and culture. We're doing perfectly with time. That's great. Communication and culture. So, communication and culture is huge at work because the language that we use becomes the culture of our workplace. You had people at work, they're just disempowering language. Like, oh my God, how was your weekend? It's like, same old, same old. Or it's Wednesday and everyone's talking about hump day. Or it's Friday and everyone's like, thank God it's Friday. I want to get out of this place. So this is a workplace culture. Most workplace cultures talk like that, but it's not a high performing workplace culture. So how do we shift? How do we shift that? Because we fall to the lowest level of our communication and thinking. We fall to the lowest level of our communication and thinking, because how we communicate is a insight into how we think. The words that come out of my mouth is an insight to my brain. So on the slide here, I have 4 principles of high performing communication. Now, the best leaders I work with use these 4 principles. The first one I'm going to talk about in detail. On the next slide, I'll show you how to do it. It's the person with the most flexible communication controls the communication. So if you're very flexible in how you think and communicate, you have the ability to control that communication and be more dynamic with it. And you don't get stuck. Now, the next one, people act based on their unique mental model. So Emily has a different way of thinking about the same event as I do, because Emily's had a whole different life than me. Every experience that Emily has ever had has been different to me. So how could we ever think the same? That goes for Marlene, that goes for Charlene, that goes for every single person on the call. None of us have the same unique internal mental model. Identical twins in the same house have had different conversations with their parents, with everyone at school. They're so different. So when we understand it, we're unbelievably curious. The comments that we've put in the chat are all different because we all have different mental models. So it's really important to understand, to lead with this curiosity and open mind. So if I said AI, some people hate it. Some people think it's evil. Some people think it's fantastic. Some people think it's somewhere in the middle and everything else in the middle. So understanding different mental models allows people to basically be a much more dynamic leader. Now, the next one down is more confrontational. Every behavior originates from a positive intention. Some people push back a little bit on this one. Every behavior originates from a positive intention, because it's like, that act was an evil act. That was an evil act that somebody did. Well, yes, we can have evil acts and really bad acts. But for that person, there was a reason that served that person. It's not necessarily right, but it did serve them in some way. So for example, if I got punched in the face, what's the positive intention why somebody punched me in the face? It doesn't make the getting punched in the face okay. So I need to understand they punched me in the face because they were offended because I offended their value of family or whatever it was. So that's the positive intention. So this also helps us lead with curiosity. Now, the last one, number 4, the meaning of communication is the response you get. Now, with this, we need to be responsible for how we are heard, not just what we say. So it goes back to being above the line. I'm responsible for the message that I put out, and I'm also responsible for that. Are they receiving that in the right way? And by the way, it also helps when the person listening has an above the line mindset. So they're not like, oh, you told me the wrong thing. So it only helps if you have a culture where everyone's above the line. Otherwise, they'll blame you and you'll blame them. But what it means is the meaning of the communication is the response you get, means that if I say, Emily, on this next project, I really want to be more innovative. Can you be more innovative on the next project? And next thing, Emily changes the whole, rebrands the whole company, changes the website. Everything's different. But I didn't mean that. I just meant to like tweak a few ideas. But that's my responsibility because the response that I got from her was different. So it's a two-way conversation. It's not just output. So here are the 4 principles of high-performing communication. It's really important. Now, I'm going to talk you through this first principle here in the next slide. Just one tool. We've only got time to cover off one. It's the person with the most flexible mental skills controls the communication. So what do I mean by this? Let's say you're all planning an awards conference for your company, your organization. There's a big awards conference coming up. Now, you can talk about the big picture, which is what's the purpose of it? Why are we doing it? What's the vision for this conference? That's called chunking up. That's in the hierarchy of ideas. It's called chunking up. And we can also chunk down into the specifics. What date are we doing it? Who are the speakers going to be? What's the seating arrangement? Where's the after party going to be? So whoever controls the level of that communication controls the communication. So if you're in a team meeting and everyone's saying, I don't agree with that seating arrangement. No, we shouldn't have it in the maritime room. I think we should have it in the Novotel room, and they're arguing about the details. A leader that controls the level of the conversation can chunk up and say, actually, why are we doing this? And for what purpose are we doing this? And that's the question to chunk up. You ask, for what purpose? And they say, oh, well, we're looking to give a positive experience. And you could say again, for what purpose are we wanting to have a positive experience? You're chunking up even higher. Well, ultimately, we really want to bring people together. Why are we doing that? So, because we're like a family in this company. So you've now, instead of them arguing about maritime room versus Novotel and what date it's going to be, they're like, we're aligned. Now let's have a positive experience. And the opposite could be true. It's like, we all know we want to have a positive experience, but geez, we don't have a date. We don't have a venue. We need to chunk down to the details. So this is called the hierarchy of ideas, controlling the level of communication. So if any of you know Marco Rubio, I've been watching him lately in the news, and I'm like, this guy is an absolute master at this. This tool is actually from the CIA, and they picked it up from neuro-linguistic programming. So NLP, you might have heard of that. And this guy uses it at a world scale, unbelievable. So he has to front the media about the Ukraine war, and he's getting smashed with questions by reporters that are trying to catch him out. So they'll ask him questions like, you told me on Wednesday that you were going to have a deal on Thursday about what the security guarantees for Ukraine are going to be. And what date this war is going to end. And they're asking him all these details and the promises that he had made. So he's stuck. But Marco's flexible. He controls the level of the communication. He chunks up. He's like, now you got to remember that, this is a president that is wanting to stop the killing. And, we're ultimately here to find peace. So we're actually having these conversations. It's not easy, but this is the ultimate goal. So as you can see, Marco has controlled that communication. He's shifted the level. And the audience listening on TV are like, yeah, you're right, Marco. We do want peace. So he's controlled that level of communication. And the reporters are doing the opposite. They're trying to get him, and they're trying to pin him down with details. They're doing their job. He needs to answer some questions. So it's a dance between the hierarchy of ideas. So use this tool. And it's a really cool tool because when you're working with people and they often get stuck, you can go up and down depending on what's required at the time. So those are a couple of easy examples you can use. Some of you would have heard about the problem ownership model. This is an idea that helps you know, because you can't fix everyone's problems. Some problems are not yours to have. So in this scenario, I'm not going to go through them all, but it's important to know if you own the problem, somebody else needs to own the problem, or you both own the problem. So it's going to help you take things off your plate. It's called the problem ownership model. It's actually from family therapy. It really applies to the workplace. So for example, your manager assigns you a task with unclear instructions and you're busy. That's your problem. You need to deal with that. You need to talk to your manager about putting some boundaries in place. Or a peer is stressed about a presentation they are responsible for delivering to leadership. You could help them with that. But ultimately, if you're busy, that's their problem to own. If somebody's dog died and they're venting to you, you don't need to take on that problem. So you need to figure out if it's your problem or if it's somebody else's problem. It's about putting out those boundaries. Okay, our last section that we're going to cover off before we wind it up is the tool, the system that mental skills is most known for. So we've covered off mindsets and belief. We've covered off clarity and direction, given you a tool for communication and culture. Now, I'm going to give you a few tools to help people perform under pressure. So performing under pressure is, that's what people most think mental skills are, but it's part of a wider system. So let's crack into it. Firstly, we need to understand what pressure is. And you don't need to go on Andrew Huberman's podcast and be an expert on neuroscience and listen to 50 hours of content of the brain to understand all the neurotransmitters, all the different parts of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala. You don't need to know all that. You don't need to know all of the receptors of the brain, the neural pathways. But you do need to understand that a simple concept of how the brain works as a leader. And I'll summarize it with this simple model. There's part of the brain that you can control, and there's part of the brain that you can't. So part of the brain is automatic, it's instinctual, and it's emotional. That's your autopilot. And there's part of the brain where you get agency back. And that's the bit that we're wanting to use when we're performing under pressure. We don't want to be emotional when we're performing under pressure and instinctual on autopilot. We need to get back our personal agency back above the line. So there's a model from Jonathan Haidt from NYU. He called it the elephant and the rider. The elephant is the autopilot that you can't control. The rider is the bit that you can control. And also, Daniel Kahneman, he called it System 1 and System 2 in his book. So System 1 is automatic, it's instinctual, it's fast. System 2 is flow, it's rational and deliberate. They're talking about the exact same concept. Kerry Evans, who worked with the All Blacks, he's a psychiatrist from New Zealand. He calls it red head and blue head. He's talking about the exact same concept, red head and blue head. The red head is our emotions and instincts. The blue head is when we're calm and rational. So we want to be turning on our blue head, turning off our red head, or reducing it. And the reason in this model I have the elephant, it's actually under the water. It's to illustrate that we're unaware of what's happening with the elephant. We don't know. We can't control it. It's what depth psychologists Jung and Freud called the unconscious mind. The unconscious. So you don't need to know anything more than that, other than it's part of our brain we control, part of the brain that we can't control. So with that being said, I'll give you some tools to help with that. So we've got two situations here. Some common situations. You're fronting a media after a crisis and you're in red head. You're in system one, you're overwhelmed. Or you're dealing with a difficult person or an abusive person, same thing. You're in fight, flight, freeze in that red head, below the line, elephant. You're the elephant in that situation. So now, how can we turn back on our rider so that we have self-control again? So this is a common situation. If you're coaching somebody, or if you've seen a situation similar, use these tools for that same situation. So how do we fix it? First, we've laid foundations already. We've changed our mindset and beliefs around it. We're clear on our values and direction. We have a structure in our system of support in our organization. So now that we've laid all that, now we need some specific tools to perform under this pressure. How do we perform under this pressure? So, okay, the first thing you do, you're fronting a media after a crisis. You need to come back to the present moment. Now, how do you do that? A couple of simple tools. You can do a mindfulness grounding exercise. A simple one you can do is, what are 3 things that you can see, 3 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can feel? And then you do 2 things that you can see, 2 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can feel. And then you start grounding yourself in the present moment rather than being worried about the future. And you combine this with a simple thing like box breathing, which calms the autonomic nervous system by breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, and breathing out for 4 seconds. So now you've come back to the present moment. So you're fronting a media after a crisis, you're now grounded in the present rather than worried about the unknown or what questions they're going to ask you. Another tool to help manage your state under this pressure, it's to create a precision trigger. Create a precision trigger. So a trigger is either something you see, something you hear, something you feel, or something that you taste that anchors you into the emotion that you want. So in this situation, you might want to be excited, or you might want to be relaxed. So what's something that will anchor you into that moment? So for tennis players that I work with, they might do a fist pump. A strong fist pump is like, now I'm motivated. So whenever they need to get motivated, they'll do a fist pump before they start the point to get them going. Damian McKenzie, you'll probably watch him on Saturday, goal kicking. He has a process and rituals that he uses, take the same amount of steps back. He'll go through his routine, visualize the ball going through the posts. And the last thing he does is actually a trigger. It's a physical kinesthetic trigger. He will smile at the goalpost. And that anchors him into the state of relaxation. So what he would have done is he would have remembered a time when he felt really happy. And that might have been when he was in childhood, in the playground at his school. And he smiled. So that smile takes him back to that time and triggers him into that mental state. So he's controlling his state through triggers. Scott Robinson actually used this a lot with the Crusaders. He would create visual triggers, like they have to walk through the tunnel and see visual triggers of all the great people that had played before them. The New Zealand Sevens team uses it. They have a visual trigger where people run out onto the field in training through a love gate. And when they go through that anchor, they know that they have to be in that state. So there's a lot of triggers that you can use. The Wolf of Wall Street, he used to use something that he would smell when he needed energy. So there's lots of things that you can do, but this is a process that I take clients through. You can't teach it in a 1 hour seminar, but it's finding what it is for you from your past that takes you back to the state. If anyone's been married, and if I played your wedding song right now, let's say my wife walked down the aisle to 1,000 Years by, I can't remember who sang it, but that song is a trigger for her for their wedding day. Or it might be something that you smell, like some cooking that you had when you were a kid, takes you back to that feeling of comfort. There's triggers and anchors that you can do. And you can create that before a pinnacle event. A pinnacle event might be fronting the media after a crisis. So, okay, I'm going to go through my routine, do my anchors so that I control my state, not my state being controlled to me. Another thing to do is something called exterosection and focusing on your intent. So if you focus on your intent, this exterosection is, what do I want the audience to take away from this? I want them to have a feeling of this warmth. So now instead of me being self-conscious, I'm focusing outwardly, externally. That's exterosection. So now let's move through to the second example, dealing with the difficult person. So you've got an abusive person that comes into your office. Maybe they're threatening bad language or violence. What do you do? So you've got the foundations laid of your mindset, your clarity and direction. You have the support structures. Now, what are the tools? What do you do? A simple model called ACT. Now, this is how ACT works. ACT stands for acknowledge, choices, take action. So this person comes in, they're threatening violence. First, you can acknowledge and accept that this is a difficult situation. This is awkward. And I feel like fight, flight, or freeze. My heart rate's gone up. I'm in system 1. I'm in red head. Acknowledge how you feel and accept it. Then choices, you're giving yourself agency back. What can I do? Do I fight them? No. Do I yell at them? Do I get some backup? Do I choose a specific way to open what I say? So you've got options, and what's the best option to use based on your values? And that's you take action towards your values. So that's ACT. Acknowledge, choices, take action. So you've acknowledged that you've calmed yourself and accepted it. You've got choices that gives you back agency and control. And then you take action towards what's important to your values. Now, similarly, if you could also do ACT on this person. So you've done it on yourself, and you could also do ACT on them. Now, this is how it would work. They're coming at you, they're yelling at you, they're in a threatening way in an office. Acknowledge how they're feeling. So I hear you're upset. I hear you're upset because you feel like this and this has gone wrong. And they'll be like, yeah, that's why I'm upset. So now you've acknowledged them and they feel heard. So then that takes them a little bit away from redhead. They understand why they're there, and you've acknowledged it. And then we can give them some choices. Okay, would you like to talk about it now? Would you like to talk it later? What are our options? And then we do those. So you've given them agency back. You've acknowledged how they feel. So that's how you can use ACT in a situation when you're dealing with a difficult person. The other thing you can do is zoom out. So you can zoom out physically and take a step away physically and actually leave or take a step back. And you can also zoom out metaphorically, like a helicopter view. So you're mentally zooming out and say, okay, I'm taking a step back. How can I see it from their perspective? How can I see it from a third person point of view? And when you do that, then you can act with more consciously, with more control. And that's when we are using that rider, the prefrontal cortex, doing the harder thing when it's the right thing to do. We need to switch that bit back on. So another tool is reframing. You probably hear about reframing a lot, but a simple way to reframe that is, isn't it great that this person is so passionate about this issue? You've reframed it. And box breathing, calming yourself. So those are some simple tools. There's a lot of tools that you can use. I can't cover them all off in a 1 hour session. So I hope that is helpful, and I hope you've been able to take some notes and apply some of these things. Now, the next question, last thing I talk about is how do you integrate this into your culture? So you've got a structure of, you've got a great structure. Your people are amazing at their job. They've got a great skill set, and now you have mental skills. You've got the mindsets and beliefs, the clarity and direction. You've got tools for performing under pressure. You've got tools for communication and culture. So we want to have an integrated performance model. A mental performance strategy is factored into the business decision-making. Mental performance is part of the everyday vocabulary, and it's also driven internally by leaders. So that's what an ideal way to integrate today's knowledge into a workplace would look like in a ideal high-performing workplace. So think about that. I'll leave you with the question is, how can you integrate this? How can you integrate some of these tools to make your people perform better at work? It's ultimately what it comes down to. Help them perform better so everyone gets a better result, makes more money, or performs better. And also they enjoy work more. And you enjoy work more too.